All right, high rollers, if you've ever been to Las Vegas, you can understand the appeal. It's not for everybody, but if you're a poker player, gambler, or just a person who enjoys free drinks at the slot machines, you gotta love Sin City. And our guest today absolutely loves Las Vegas, so much so that he and a few friends started a podcast celebrating everything that is Las Vegas. And I'll tell you what, I listened to the latest episode today. It's absolutely dynamite. When planning your next trip to Vegas, you got to check out the podcast first. www.facesandaceslv.com contains so much valuable information, things to do, things to watch out for. And our guest today is the host of Faces and Aces LV. Chris, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for being our high roller today.
Hey, Derek, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Listen to the episode with Frank Scobletti today. He's a former guest of ours as well, renowned gambler, gaming author. You've had a lot of great guests on. You can't find much better than Frank. They've all got a fascinating take on Las Vegas, too.
Yeah, I mean, Frank, first of all, above all, is the nicest guy you'll ever meet. So it was real great. It was real fun just chatting with him. We recorded, oh man, well over an hour. I had to split it up into 2 episodes, and there was even more stuff where he and I just kind of geeked out together and talked about science fiction that did actually make it to air, because I don't know if the Vegas fans would appreciate that, but he is a sweet guy. And really, I mean, Frank was kind of one of the only celebrities that I've had on the show. Mostly I like to focus on talking to people in Vegas, the people that you run into at the blackjack tables, the people who are working so hard to make sure that you have a good time in Vegas.
Well, blackjack's your game. I understand that. It's a great game. And a lot of the casinos on the strip these days are moving to 6-5 payouts, which isn't good. I mean, it's supposed to be 3-2, right?
Man, it's been 3-2 for as long as I remember. And yeah, I guess the casinos are trying to increase what they're getting from the gamblers. What really kind of stumps me about the whole situation is if you're trying to draw in people to gamble more, specifically the millennials, why would you change the odds so it's less favorable to gamble? I really don't understand that, but you know, it's the way the things are going. And if you want to get away from the 6-5, you just got to play a bigger amount. It's like the 25, typically $25, $50, $100 tables are 3-2. So if you can step up your game, that's one way to get around it.
You mentioned millennials there. I mean, when they go to Vegas nowadays, it's not like they're hitting the gaming tables with regularity. It's more about the shows and the other things to do. They sit by the pool. We got to find out a way to get these millennials back to Vegas and create a great gambling experience for them as well.
I wonder if this has been a problem that's been going on in Vegas for a long time, because when I was in my 20s, I didn't necessarily have the disposable income to sit at the table and lose a lot. I would do a lot of the things that they did too. So I don't know if this is a millennial problem or a 20-something problem. You know, Vegas will do what it needs to do to adapt to the incoming generation. They'll figure out what works, and they'll get there. Hopefully it'll work out for all of us.
You talked about Frank Scobletti, great guest, fascinating author, has written so many great books. He was featured on the show Breaking Vegas. Your podcast is so much more than just about gambling, though. I mean, I listened to the podcast today. It was great. Where else are you going to find out about the quirky tones of Richard Cheese and his band Lounge Against the Machine? Just $19 a ticket in Vegas. I'm definitely checking him out next time I go. A couple of the songs you played were just great. I mean, he did a cover of Guns N' Roses' Welcome to the Jungle.
I think my favorite of his is his lounge cover of Black Hole Sun.
So this is the kind of thing you do on the podcast, right? You seek out the quirky, all the things in Vegas that are maybe not so mainstream sometimes.
I think I have a quirky sense of humor, and I've been going to Vegas for well over 20 years, and I'm just, at this point, the gambling, the eating, the shows, although I do still find them appealing, I'm trying to expand my boundaries and see what else is out there in Vegas. And one of the cool things that I found was something called Adventure Combat Ops. I actually had the opportunity to do that last August, where you go out there, you get dressed up in full fatigues and gear and helmet and goggles, and they give you airsoft rifles. So guns that actually shoot projectiles, just not bullets. They're just, airsoft pellets. And you go around this warehouse that's been dressed like an abandoned street with overturned cars, and they manufacture a bunch of houses in there, and you hunt zombies.
Wow. See, this is great because when I go to Vegas, I'm a poker player. The only thing I think about is playing poker, but there's so much more there to do, things like that.
Exactly, and that's one of the biggest regrets that I usually have when going to Vegas. If I leave a table up with that extra few $100 instead of going to another table and giving it right back to the casinos, I'd like to go and find something different that I've never done before. And, helicopter ride is on the bucket list. Jumping off the stratosphere is on the bucket list. There's just so many cool things to do in Vegas besides the obvious.
Well, I love the podcast name, facesandaceslv.com. I love the Twitter address at facesandaceslv. Love the logo. And I love this line on your Twitter feed, what happens in Vegas ends up on this podcast. So you're trying to appeal anybody that might be going to Sin City for a vacation, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I learned is whenever I would come back from Vegas, we would always have stories to share, and we'd tell them to our immediate friends. Well, people can come on the show anonymously if they choose and tell their crazy Vegas stories, because anything can happen in Vegas. Anything and everything happens in Vegas. So I encourage people to come on and share their crazy, wacky, debaucherous, whatever kind of story they have. And then what I will typically do is, once I've heard that story, I'll head out to Vegas and try to do some sort of follow-up interview with someone who's related to the topic of the story.
Yeah, it's important to note that you're from California. You make these trips to Las Vegas. It's for love of the game. How did it all start? I know you do it with friends. I can only imagine this all started after a crazy weekend in Las Vegas.
I wish. Crazy hangover type stories to tell, which is part of the reason why I go out to other people, because I'm a pretty mellow dude. I don't do a lot of crazy stuff. So I reach out to other people, and the podcast started from the three of us heading out to Vegas, just having a good time talking about when we get to Vegas, a lot of times we'll split up, and then in the drive back, which is about 3.5 hours, we'll share the stories of some of the things that we experience. And I thought this would be fun to do with Katie and Aaron, and it was for a while. And then at a certain point, it kind of became obvious that I loved Vegas way more than they did.
Right.
So while Katie and Aaron and I are still friends and we still hang out, we just don't do a podcast together. I kind of evolved into a solo podcast.
Well, I like the idea of the quote on the website. We'll try to share our experiences so listeners can learn from our mistakes and benefit from our research. You really celebrate the people in Las Vegas, the people who work there. We hear the phrase all the time, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. What are some of the pitfalls travelers face when they go there? I can only imagine how many people have woken up in the morning married when they shouldn't be, or gambled away the house and the fortune, maybe even ended up in jail. I mean, you go to Vegas, and I've experienced this too. You're so excited to get out on your vacation. You start the drinking early, and sometimes those Vegas nights can get away from you.
That's interesting, because there are a couple of those types of stories on the show. We had one person come on the show and share the story about how someone in their hotel room had a bet that he could break a champagne bottle with the Prince Albert piercing that he had on his penis. And he won the bet, but he also cut a huge gash into it.
Oh.
He had to be rushed to the emergency room.
Ouch. I mean, these are the things, a lot of people forget that the drinks are free, and sometimes alcohol plays a big part. It can spoil a weekend, so people got to watch out for that.
Yeah, and another story that comes to mind is I was talking to a bartender, and she told me, a lot of people will like to hook up in Vegas. One of the things that they have to be careful about is, I asked her, have you ever seen some dude slip a roofie into a woman's drink? And she said, no, I haven't seen that, but I've seen hookers slip roofies into guys' drinks, and, they kind of work their way up to the room, and then she'll clean the place out.
Yeah, you got to be careful of that, too. Have you talked to hookers?
Not yet.
I know you want to, because you mentioned it on the podcast, but can you tell us real quick the homeless guy story that you shared?
Oh, sure. So I headed out to Vegas to do an interview with a friend of mine, and we're sitting in a coffee house, upstairs of a coffee house, kind of in the back, a real secluded area. And we're doing our interview. All of a sudden, just a guy comes out of the elevator, this homeless gentleman, and asks us for some money. And I tell him, buddy, my policy is I typically will not give money to a homeless person. I'm happy to buy them food, but I don't necessarily want to support any kind of drug habit that they might have. And so I tell him, buddy, I'd love to help you. I can't give you any money. Is there anything else I can do for you? And he looks at me, says, I could use a new shirt. So I said, buddy, you can have the shirt. I take off my shirt, I give it to him, and he goes on his way. We finish up the interview, and since now I'm just wearing a t-shirt and kind of shirtless, I head back to the hotel room to get a new shirt for myself. And I come back down to the area. This was at the Beat Coffee House in downtown Las Vegas. I come back to that neighborhood, and I see the same guy getting arrested.
No way.
He's face down, hands behind his back on a police car. Cops are, searching through his pockets, and he's wearing my shirt. And maybe I've watched just one too many episodes of CSI or something like that. But the thing that goes through my mind is, I was out in the Las Vegas heat all day. I've sweat all over that shirt and the pits and the collar, and I'm thinking, my DNA is all over this shirt. And if this guy's going down for like some kind of serious felony, I don't want to be related to this in any way. So I pull over, get out of the car, talk to the officer, and say, "Hey, man, good to meet you. What did this guy do?" And he says, "I can't really, I can't tell you what he did." I said, "Well, let me explain the situation. I gave this guy my shirt, and now I kind of know what I like, so I buy a lot of shirts that are very similar to each other. It's kind of like looking at Popeye's closet, where it's just the same shirt all the way down the line. And so I just kind of say, he's wearing my shirt, and the policeman looks at me, looks at the guy in the hood, looks back at me. It's like, yeah, he is wearing your shirt. I said, no, you don't understand. This guy is literally wearing my shirt. I wearing his shirt. And the cop puts two and two together and says, oh. No, you're good. You're good. He's just going down for some kind of drug charges. He's well known in the neighborhood. He's gonna go away. You're fine. You're good. You have nothing to worry about.
He's going down for murder. Your DNA's all over that thing.
Yeah, exactly. To find his accomplice.
Well, I know you've had several podcasts on different subjects, casino dealers. You've talked about having a good time in the casino. The World Series of Poker is coming up, 90 days this summer at the Rio. Lots of people from everywhere flocking to the Rio. What can you suggest, maybe a quirky suggestion for some of those people that are there for the full 2 months that maybe want to get outside, get some fresh air, and go do something different? What would you say to them?
Man, for outside and fresh air, and this is also on my bucket list of things to do, go for a hike out in Vegas. Rent a car, go out to, I believe it's called the Valley of Fire. This is something that someone recommended to me recently, and it's just gorgeous red rocks. It's fantastic from what I've seen. But yeah, go out and get some exercise, get some fresh air. Other fun stuff, man. Oh boy, let me see.
Well, there's a lot of good eateries too, right? Lots of great places to have a dinner.
Oh, Vegas has become a mecca for great food. And, automatically your mind goes to the Chef Ramsay places, the Giada places. But if you don't really want to break the bank, you can head off to places like the Downtown Container Park, or downtown Las Vegas. You'll find a lot more moderately priced meals at places like Shafini's Hot Dogs or Pizza Rock.
Now, what about Old Vegas compared to the Strip? Where do you like to hang out when you make your trips there?
Personally, I like to stay on the Strip and take maybe a day trip out to Old Vegas.
So you like to take both in then?
Oh, definitely. I mean, they're both worth seeing. When I game, I usually like to play at a Caesars property just because I like to earn my comp points there. I tend to stay away from MGM properties because they were the first to enact the parking fees, and they just nickel and dime so much. And I know pretty much everybody does it on the Strip now, but when that started, I decided not to eat, drink, shop, or gamble at the MGM properties. And, slowly, unfortunately, Caesars is following suit. But if they follow suit, there aren't really many other choices.
It's interesting because a lot of the gamblers I talk to mention that very same thing, the nickel and diming of the big casino conglomerates on the Strip, that it's just getting outrageous. Paid parking, 6 to 5, things like that. They just get you coming and going.
Yeah, and it's not very old-style Vegas where you used to go out there and just get comped everything, the $3.99 steak and eggs in the morning. It's the new face of Vegas, and I think that people just kind of have to accept it or don't patronize the places that you don't find favorable.
By the way, one thing I like about your podcast is that you really celebrate other podcasts, right? You've had a lot of different hosts from other shows on. I think that's a great thing.
Man, I love podcasts. I'm a graphic designer, and I'm sitting in front of a computer for, 8 hours a day, and I need something to keep myself entertained. So podcasts are my go-to form of entertainment, and I love what's out there. There are so many options. Man, I feel bad that I was so late in coming to your party. You've had some great episodes.
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to share a couple of Vegas stories with you in a few minutes for your podcast. But yeah, keep up the good work. I mean, I do this as a hobby for love of the game, and I can tell that you just love it too.
Man, podcasting is just a great way to get out there and meet some cool people, especially the type of podcast that I do. I love hearing people's Vegas stories. So if you also like to hear Vegas stories, check me out.
I'll tell you what, we've had him on, Frank Scobliti, America's #1 gaming author. Casino Conquest is one of his books, How to Beat the Casino at Craps. He's got a lot of books out there, and he's a fascinating listen, very well spoken. He tells a lot of great stories. and you can hear a 2-part series with Frank Scobliti at facesandaceslv.com. They're at facesandaceslv on Twitter. You got to check them out. It's everything about Vegas. Chris, our guest today, thank you so much, man.
Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it. I had a good time.